Half an hour after the midday prayer on 28 October 1948 recalled the Mukhtar, 20 armored cars entered the village from Kubaiba, while soldiers attacked simultaneously from the opposite flank. The 20 people guarding the village were immediately paralyzed with fear. The soldiers on the armored cars opened fire with automatic weapons and mortars, making their way into the village in a semicircular movement. Following the established routine, they surrounded the village from three flanks, leaving open the eastern flank with the aim of driving out 6,000 people in 1 hour. When this failed to happen, the troops jumped out of their vehicles and started shooting at the people indiscriminately, many of whom ran to the mosque to seek shelter or fled to a nearby holy cave called Iraq al Zag. Venturing back into the village the next day, the Mukhtar beheld with horror the piles of dead bodies in the mosque, with many more strewn about in the street, men, women, and children, among them his own father. When he went to the cave, he found the entrance blocked by dozens of corpses. The count the Mukhtar carried out told him that 455 people were missing, among them around 170 children and women. The Jewish soldiers who took part in the massacre also reported horrific scenes: babies whose skulls were cracked open, women raped or burned alive in houses, and men stabbed to death. These were not reports delivered years later, but eyewitness accounts sent to the High Command within a few days of the event. The brutality they describe reinforces my faith in the accuracy of the descriptions mentioned earlier on of the hideous crimes Israeli soldiers committed in Tantura, Safsaf, and Shah, all reconstructed mainly with the help of Palestinian testimonies and oral histories. This was this was the end result of the order that the commander of Battalion 89 of Brigade 8 had received from the Chief of Staff, Yigael Yadin. Your preparations should include psychological warfare and treatment, tipul, of citizens as an integral part of the operation. The massacre of Dawemech was the last large massacre Israeli troops perpetrated until 1956, when 49 villagers of Kfar Qasim, a village transferred to Israel in the armistice agreement with Jordan, were butchered. Ethnic cleansing is not genocide, but it does carry with it atrocious acts of mass killing and butchering. Thousands of Palestinians were killed ruthlessly and savagely by Israeli troops of all backgrounds, ranks, and ages. None of these Israelis was ever tried for war crimes, in spite of the overwhelming evidence. And if here and there in 1948 some remorse was to be found, as in a poem by Nathan Alterman, the same Alterman who had in 1945 compared the Palestinians to the Nazis, it was no more than another show of shoot and cry, a typically righteous Israeli way of seeking self absolution. When he first heard of the brutal slaughtering of innocent civilians in the north in Operation Hiram, Alterman wrote, on a jeep he crossed the street, a young man, prince of beasts. An old couple cowered to the wall, and, with his angelic smile, he called The submachine I will try. And he did, spreading the old man's blood on the lid. Nor did any contrition, such as Alterman's, stop the forces from completing their mission of cleansing Palestine, a job to which they now applied increasing levels of ruthlessness and cruelty. Hence, starting in November 1948 and all the way up to the final agreement with Syria and Lebanon in the summer of 1949, another 87 villages were occupied. 36 of these were emptied by force, while from the rest a selective number of people were deported. As 1950 began, the energy and purposefulness of the expellers finally began to wane, and those Palestinians who were still living in Palestine, by then divided into the State of Israel, a Jordanian West Bank, and an Egyptian Gaza Strip, were largely safe from further expulsions. True, they were placed under military rule both in Israel and Egypt, and as such remained vulnerable. But whatever the hardships they incurred, it was a better fate than they had suffered throughout that year of horrors we now call the Nakba.